Welcome everyone to the seventh webinar of this special series on alcohol policy in Canadian municipalities. My name is Tina and I will be introducing today's session. The topic of today's webinar is Grassroots Approach to Alcohol Policy, a Nova Scotia Sharing. So our presenters for today are Sophie and Barb, and I will now hand over to Sophie to begin their presentation.
Hello, everybody. So as Tina mentioned, my name is Sophie Melanson, and I'm a health promoter with Mental Health and Addictions Department of Nova Scotia Health. I'd like to acknowledge that I am sitting in Mi'kmaq, the traditional unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq. We are all treaty people who benefit greatly from the shared resources of this land covered by the treaties of peace and friendship. However, this isn't just a statement of geography. It's a reminder that colonial history continues to shape health, substance use, stigma, in profound ways. Now, I'm going to tell you a story. It's full of wonderful acquaintances, colleagues, and mentors. Some have become friends, and most are much more eloquent than I and have contributed more depth than I on the matter as well. This is first and foremost a team effort, where many hands make for, if not light work, at least more sustained work. For this, I'm grateful for your perseverance, expertise, community pride, and sense of what's possible. For the fortunate ones who were able to participate in CAPE's wonderful webinars so far, this offering might seem like a little departure. In the next 40 or so minutes, I'll forgo as many technical bits as possible and skip much of the statistics, which frankly, I wouldn't do justice anyway. Instead, given that the best way to make change is to find common ground from which to find solutions together, I plan to focus heavily on those grassroots efforts mentioned in my title. Next slide. So, how does Nova Scotia compare to other provinces and territories in accordance to the CAPE 3.0 scoring system? I'd say we're somewhere in the middle of the pack, but I've been encouraged by the blue box, which stipulates that if we implemented all the best existing policies across Canada, we could go from a failing grade to an A- student. So thank you for that. Next slide. In the beginning, a long, long time ago. Okay, so you get the idea, but in all seriousness, I feel fortunate to be able to say that I was there when Nova Scotia became the first Canadian province to have an alcohol strategy. Correct me if I'm wrong, which will be celebrating 20 years next year. Jeez, that ages me quite a bit. It wasn't perfect and it has had its challenges, but it is a big part of our origin story. Although not linear, we've made great strides, as you can see just by the graphic. The items mentioned in this slide are by no means exhaustive, so apologies for any that weren't included. Our community partners are vast, and to mention all their efforts would have required much more time than we have today. That being said, I do want to provide a quick nod to the meaningful tobacco advocacy work that predates and in many ways informed our efforts with the alcohol advocacy. When we speak of grassroots, we certainly owe a big piece of our ethos to the grassroots trailblazers that grew during that period. On this slide, you'll see some of the key documents that I'll mention again in the presentation that have assisted in our community conversations, mainly our provincial alcohol strategy, our alcohol indicators reports, municipal alcohol policy local reports, followed by a subsequent collaborative type guide for municipalities, which was called Progressive and Prosperous. I'll go, like I mentioned, into more detail in the following slides. But first, how do we see MAPS in Nova Scotia? Like many provinces, we see it as a formal municipal policy that sets out rules, expectations, and procedures for the sale, service, consumption, and advertising of alcohol on municipally owned and managed property. Examples include parks, beaches, waterfronts, community centers, arenas and halls, municipal buildings, municipally hosted or permitted events and festivals. MAPs allow Nova Scotia municipalities to manage alcohol responsibly, locally, and proactively, while respecting provincial legislation and community values. MAPs help councils protect residents, visitors, and municipal assets. It helps reduce legal and financial risks, ensure consistent, transparent decision-making, and demonstrate leadership in public health and safety. Next slide. Oh. Next slide. Like in any big, bold adventure, many pivotal moments have contributed to the plot of our story. I'll offer general observation here that although most of our thoughts here are provincial in scope, they certainly have had big impacts on our municipalities. Shortly after the launch of our provincial alcohol strategy, minimum drink prices are set at $2.50. From about 2001 to 2009, there's a notable alcohol outlet density increase, measuring about 65% in that period. Move ahead a few years, and we have alcohol service, mainly 2 drinks without food in restaurants. And the loosening of rules allow for interprovincial importation of wine for personal use, so between provinces. Then comes cannabis legalization, which we all went through, and in Canada, which impacted our sales environments through, in our case, the Nova Scotia Liquor Commission. Shortly after that, COVID, also we all went through. I won't go through all the implications of that, but we know that alcohol use increased initially in isolation in homes, which provided the impetus for home deliveries, again, increasing access. This change was never reverted. In 2025, the provincial importation is again expanded for personal use, this time covering spirits and beer. And finally, our most recent issue at hand has been the proposed increased access through retail sale in public spaces. This has been tabled for the time being at the province, but our community partners keep their eyes open wide about this. A quick note that some of the efforts that are not included in this slide are the many advocacy efforts around sponsorship and naming rights around multiple recreational and sports facilities in our province. Next slide. One of the very impactful pieces of work stemmed from the realization that although municipalities are impacted, harmed by alcohol overconsumption, decision makers weren't fully aware of the power they yielded in affecting change. A collaboration between Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities, a provincial body, and health advocates throughout the province was born from the need to be better informed and equipped on this matter. So please consider this document on the screen, a bit of a choose your own adventure, which might seem more palatable to municipalities. It includes themes such as marketing, advertising, sponsorship, enjoyable and safe neighborhoods through zoning and land use, hours of operation, enforcement and established partnerships, municipally owned and managed properties, facilities, and special events, municipal risk and liability, as well as workplace strategy. Next slide. On one such adventure has been the creation of Wolfville's municipal alcohol policy. And so it's to my great pleasure to introduce you to Barb Shaw. Barb is the manager of communications and strategic initiatives for the town of Wolfville. Her files include accessibility, inclusion, and community safety. 5 years ago now, when she was new to her role in a university town in the heart of Nova Scotia's booming wine region, she was challenged to draft and deliver a community alcohol strategy. Nice first job, right, Barb? This experience led to an important lesson. Failure moves you forward. Over to you, Barb.
Thanks so much, Sophie, and thank you to today's organizers. So friends, I'm joining you today as a guest on the land here in Mi'kma'ki, the home of the Mi'kmaq people. And I'm really excited to share a very roundabout story with you that does include the adoption of Wolfville's first municipal alcohol policy. So as Sophie suggested, when I joined the town of Wolfville here in 21, in still the early days of the pandemic, I ended up with the community alcohol strategy on my desk, and I had no understanding why we needed one. So public health or Nova Scotia Health had been involved in this process, and I started flipping through this very dense binder that was full of information, and I realized that I had an awful lot of work to do. So the first steps I took were to understand what the problem was, because so much of municipal life is understanding a problem and then making sure that we have the tools to respond to that. And then I also needed to figure out, because this was going to be a community alcohol strategy, I needed to understand who the stakeholders were that I would need to pull in so that this wasn't just a town project. This would be a community initiative. So again, Wolfville is a university community. We're home to Acadia University, which means half of our population is under the age of 24. We're also the heart of the booming Annapolis Valley wine and artisan beverage industry. It's part of our brand. It's part of how we live. The problem from the municipality's perspective was that we were experiencing harm. And that harm, again, from the municipal perspective, came in the form of nuisance parties, vandalism, property damage, and violence. So these were things resulting from the misuse of alcohol. But I needed to go a little bit deeper into understanding what the problem was. And I have to fully admit that while I had, enjoyed alcohol as an adult, I had probably also misused alcohol at many times in my life, but I didn't really understand alcohol. And it was interesting to me because working for many years as a journalist, I had covered the cannabis file pretty carefully from medical use through to recreational cannabis. And I could have told you anything about cannabis, how it made people feel, act, the business side of it, you name it, I had the answers. I didn't know about alcohol. And that was actually pretty common. So when I did a deep dive into understanding how alcohol impacts the brain, boy, oh boy, did I learn a lot. I also at this time was invited to sit in on restorative justice circles through Valley Restorative Justice. And I was called in to participate in circles whenever there was a case that had to do with harms caused in the community as a result of the misuse of drugs and alcohol. And what that process taught me time and time again was that one of the things that we could do as a municipality or a town was to increase the number of speed bumps that people might kind of knock up against when they were using or misusing alcohol. So again, from all of this work that I was doing, I started to understand, and these are layperson's terms and my words, but what I started to understand was that, after a couple of drinks, decision-making is impaired. Aggression starts to increase. There's no consideration of long-term consequences, and rational, sensible people start to act in ways that are not usual for them. This is not good in a community. So with this starting point of understanding, I started to pull in different stakeholders. So this included neighbors who lived in our close to campus community, the RCMP who handle our policing, Nova Scotia health representatives, folks from Acadia University, plus owners of licensed establishments who were incredibly helpful in helping me understand some of the landscape. And the issue was different for every stakeholder. Everybody had insights and ideas to share. We were all in very different lanes and we all had very different tools. And we were also really, really far apart with what we wanted a community alcohol strategy to do. Now, I'm an okay facilitator, but this was daunting. So one of the groups that I wasn't hearing from were the students in our community. And so we decided to launch a really quick and dirty pilot as students were coming back into the community in the fall of 21. And we decided to kind of create a little bit of a speed bump situation. So we made these big panels out of Coroplast with big graphics, and we had like 18 of them, and we put them all around the close to campus neighborhood, hoping to catch people maybe after they were out and about, after they'd had a few drinks. And the messaging was, again, meant to be a speed bump. So we had one that was like a cute dog, and the text read something like, "Broken glass hurts my paws." And that was designed to gently say to people, please stop, please stop smashing bottles on the roads when you are drinking. So almost immediately, we realized that this pilot was going in a different direction than intended. The first group of signs went up on a Thursday night, and by Sunday afternoon, they had all been torn down. So we did it again the next week, but I added a survey sticker to the back. And the survey had a little QR code, and the sticker read, "It appears you have stolen this sign. Please answer some questions for us." And the questions were very basic. Were you impaired when you stole this sign? Did you have an audience? What's your gender? Is this usual behavior? And what will you do with the sign? I'm sure it's no surprise to folks who are participating today, the answers were pretty consistent. Yes, the individual was impaired. Yes, they had an audience. They were male. This was not usual behavior, and they had no idea what they were going to do with the sign. So this takes us back to the strategy. What do we do? So working with all the stakeholders, we landed on 3 pillars, and it was pretty basic. The pillars were awareness, events, and enforcement. And each group, each stakeholder group participating in this process was asked to please consider which one of those pillars, based on the lane that they operated within and the tools that they had, which one of those pillars could you help to operationalize? And then come back to the group and let's see what we can do. And this, quite honestly, is where the entire process became a train wreck. Everyone wanted different outcomes, and everyone just wanted the town to take care of this. Now, granted, I was pretty enthusiastic about the process, but this was not just for the town to do. So this leads me to kind of outcomes of what we did at this point. And I really want to come back to this message of, understand your lane and know the tools that you have. Because in the spirit of what we were trying to achieve within the town, we knew that one thing that we could do was create a municipal alcohol policy. And this policy acted as our speed bump. So when we're planning community events or when we're doing anything that bumps up against alcohol, we now have a really clear policy that helps guide decision making. I don't have to be in the room talking to people about the harms. We have a policy that decision makers have to adhere to. So I was pretty excited to get this done. And we also at the same time shifted how we were doing our enforcement. So we looked at a different approach when it came to the enforcement of nuisance parties, and we advocated more for early intervention through law enforcement with impaired persons, understanding that behaviors got worse the longer the person was continuing to consume alcohol. We also offered support to all of our stakeholders who wanted to participate in other levels of advocacy. So folks who wanted to change, drinking age or change the cost of alcohol, the town offered to participate in that advocacy. I will say we've had no takers to date. So I want to speak really quickly before I wrap it up here about how failure can actually move you forward. Because when I talk about our community alcohol strategy, we never completed it, and it felt like a failure. But it changed our understanding of community, and it changed our understanding of how alcohol can impact community. And it also changed our understanding about the cause of problem behaviors in our community. It changed how we work. And by working in a proactive way to prevent harm and also how we enforce in a different way, we're trying to prevent harm to individuals and to community. So most folks working this space likely feel the same frustration I felt doing this work. It's never ending. Alcohol in the moment makes a lot of people seem to feel good. And that leads to a lot of people ignoring the potential harms and the negative outcomes. So this work is always going to be challenging for us to do. But if we understand our lane and we understand the problems and the tools that we have to work with, this helps us figure out the tools we still need. And it also helps us identify the techniques that we can use to move all of the people in our communities in a safer direction. Really appreciate you showing an interest in this story.
Thank you, Barb. I so love that signage project anecdote. Every time you tell it, it's to me one of the coolest things. And I heard and I saw in the comments about the pivot, cool pivot, and I agree. It's a really, proactive way of looking at the problem. I'm including this slide. Oh, you can go to the next slide, please. Perfect. I'm including this slide for a few reasons. The community readiness model developed by the Triethnic Center for Prevention Research at Colorado State University helps me better understand that advocacy happens on a continuum, to Barb's point, never ending. I would, however, make a small adjustment here with multiple snakes and ladders. You've all played the game. Sometimes it's going forward and sometimes you're sliding down. Let me explain why I chose this model over, say, the municipal policy readiness model out of Alberta when speaking of alcohol policy specifically. I like that this tool clearly states that community readiness can vary across dimensions. We may know a great deal about an issue and realize that it's a problem, yet be unable to conceive of implementing a particular policy solution. And with our collective relationship to alcohol being what it is, to Barb's point, this definitely impacts our readiness to take action. The tool also acknowledges that community readiness can vary across different segments of the community, by which I mean that those directly affected by the issue may be far more ready to take action. And finally, one of the very biggest reasons I chose this model was that it identifies concrete ideas, strategies, solutions to help move forward, communities forward. Before I continue, I'll be talking a lot about building networks. And again, you heard Barb speak of that. Finding your people, elevating their voice with intention. So I invite you to imagine your circle of influence getting bigger and bigger and more powerful as we move forward. The skill of coalescing cannot be overemphasized here. This is also this and similar models, tend to have questionnaires attached to them to decipher which stage your group might be in. But we found it possible to gauge temperature simply through informal conversations with key stakeholders. And those conversations also tend to give us cues on commonalities, which become great places to start future conversations. Some things can signal clear progress also. For example, the no low movement that many of you may have experienced or seen in the community, where individuals are choosing to limit their own alcohol consumption or replace their high alcohol content beverages with alcohol-free options. That's a telling sign. So much so that both alcohol producers and local businesses are beginning to take it seriously and offer products to suit this clientele. Many in the social influencer sphere are speaking out about their own experience and choice, which also contributes to a culture shift, especially in our younger generation. Now, this might be a case of what came first, the egg or the chicken, or the mocktail and the considered consumer, but whichever wins, we're here for it, and people seem to be loving it too. Next slide. So you saw 9 phases. I'm going to try to group them in 4. So the first being what I call the blissful unawareness. So of the problem. So, or at least if there's a problem, it's not affecting us, or it's not something we have any control over. This isn't meant to be flippant. It highlights the need to better understand the context and our audience. So we begin with who is our audience, to Barb's point earlier. Who are our decision makers? This can be tricky depending on where in the election cycle you find yourself, or from a long game perspective. We work hard to be seen as trusted partners in the community, a smiling face. Many of us attended or attend municipally led meetings, consultations, and events. We slowly got to know our municipal units, their representatives, their staff, and which might be amenable to more discussion. We've also had wonderful student interns. We are a university province. We have many of them who have helped us create useful tools such as jurisdictional scans, alcohol marketing scans, infographics, etc. We found our allies through common interests. Although we started somewhat informally, we soon realized that there was power in formalizing the process through map reports, and I'll show you those in a minute, allowing us to build common understanding and capture some of this on paper. Our communities likely wouldn't be convinced to approach alcohol as an issue until we found A, common concerns that we felt or that they felt important enough to tackle, and B, those areas where they feel they have some control over. So we gathered community partners. This was the very initial stages. We gathered community partners, municipal leaders, service providers, community folk. We use, in some instances, the World Cafe style approach to tease out how alcohol is impacting us as a community, what can we do about it, and what is my or our role. We also used open space forums using questions like, where do you see alcohol show up in your community? How can we shift the culture of alcohol in our community? As specific topics bubbled up, which they did, we created additional opportunities for conversations around. In our case, we had things like school age and college age drinking, sports and alcohol marketing and sponsorship, and street parties, specifically in bigger cities. Although not alcohol specific, on a separate instance too, actually, we used intergenerational approach, which focused on solution finding, gathering over 100 people between the ages, I say about 12 and 92. We soon came to find out that although their contexts were different, challenges such as isolation, mental anguish, were seen across the board. And the intergenerational approach encouraged innovative solutions that could empower everyone in the room. And would you believe that alcohol and other drugs were mentioned quite a few times in those conversations? So although it wasn't a topic of conversation initially, it became. Next slide. So vague awareness of fellowship gathers. So the map reports previously mentioned became tools that we could leverage and have more fulsome conversation around. But we also took the opportunity to present at Provincial. I mentioned it earlier, the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities. They have a conference quarterly, and we presented at one or two events. Our MAP groups were born from that. In the meantime, those community partners that gathered to create the MAP reports were poised to continue the conversation locally and see what was possible on the ground. Some municipal community coalitions were formed. Some have MAPs or CAPs as titles, so sometimes it's confusing. But some still meet to this day. So the coalitions often had municipal representatives, either councils or staff. For example, Barb was a staff leading the work. Police RCMP, health partners, not-for-profit sector, so partner violence, senior supports, youth supports, educational institutions, recreation partners, community health boards were a big one, and at times even medical officers of health, when necessary or when appropriate, really weighed in and were very helpful. Although there have been a lot of ups and downs as it relates to attendance, leading to, for some groups to sunset, a few still gather. I lead one in our northern part for 3 municipalities, for example. These groups have all kind of a similar mandate to convene community partners interested in lessening alcohol-related harms, assist and support members in efforts to denormalize the pervasive nature of alcohol, and advocate for and provide support toward healthy public policy. For example, and I have 2 here, in one municipality, we were successful in thwarting an attempt to renew a lapsed cabaret license. A cabaret license just meaning that a bar can stay open later than the norm, 2 a.m. And this was thanks to, in no small part, some grassroots advocacy efforts involving some community stakeholders, including our MAP group. Multiple efforts are brought forward every year also, as mentioned by Barb, to ensure safer onboarding of students on campus. These include multitude of alcohol-free events, social campaigns aimed at harm reduction, safety training for campus staff and student advisors, etc. As you can maybe imagine, many of our municipalities are very rural in scope in Nova Scotia, and many of the policies don't seem to speak to their lived experience necessarily. For example, noise bylaws or alcohol marketing on billboards, buses, buildings, less of an issue for a town with 1,000 people. Even hours of operations in some areas are moot, and there are no liquor establishments outside of restaurants. So sometimes in those cases that there's no liquor establishments other than restaurants. I don't want to confuse folks. In this phase, we continued to build our local network, as I mentioned, but we also started really focusing on our collective provincial understanding through existing groups such as our community health boards, Injury Free Nova Scotia, which is a not-for-profit in this province, the Canadian Cancer Society, the Cancer Care Nova Scotia, also post-secondary institutions. We had a lot of help from our alcohol policy forums, which we started leading about 5 years ago. So in the past few years, we've held 4, I believe, and there's another one on the horizon. These were provincial in scope, but many times we had people from other provinces participate and even present. These forums were meant to increase not only the awareness of the issue and solution finding, but also a sense of coalition within the group. which indeed helped in the formation of the Nova Scotia Alcohol Policy Coalition, which I belong to, and many do, another provincial group. We also provide peripheral supports, hype, and excitement. And this is probably where I have a lot of fun. Organizing opportunities for conversation, again, in the scope of building meaning and common understanding to Barb's, and, figure out how do we merge our lanes a little bit. We participate in the family-friendly type events I mentioned earlier and provide alcohol-free options in many cases. We might not only attend, but offer assistance at events municipalities host. For example, multicultural events, festivals, carnivals, etc. We've developed a community harm reduction champion program and have awarded publicly and in the media, this is important, a few individuals and groups who have contributed to lessening harms in the community. And we've created innovative activities, events, and materials, infographics, newspaper editorials, radio and television interviews, innovative projects such as Barb's poster project, positive movement, no-low movement through social media, alcohol-free events, some social media posting, etc. Next slide. At this point, so when we talk about the village stirs, right, we're in the pre-planning and preparation stage. People are ready to start thinking about how to address the issue and begin to gather information to lay the groundwork for planning community strategies to deal with the issue. Depending on the issue that bubbles up for municipal units, maybe through our conversations, it's important to either provide or develop the tools to support decision-making here. Two examples of this are in the Western Zone, we have a MAC group produced harm reduction checklist for event, or sorry, in the northern part, this one. It's a harm reduction checklist for event planners, which covers a range of inclusivity and safety measures, which include accessibility needs, safe event design and layout, emergency preparedness, and mitigation of climate change. A second project was the community-led substance availability mapping project that is in the Western Zone, which focused on several key sets of indicators, including location and outlet density for on-premise retail locations, proximity indicators that will demonstrate the distance between those and sensitive areas such as schools, shelters, playgrounds, hospitals, and also health and health equity indicators. This level of detail helps provide communities with the information and tools they need to make well-informed decisions. And the next slide. So this slide I won't speak too much about, simply because Barb has done a wonderful job at stating some of the challenges and ups and downs and some of the elements of this. But I will say that there's no lack of challenges in this phase. And so on that note, I'd like to guide you through a very short activity. A coalition of community partners has been working together for months to advance municipal alcohol policy. They've led listening sessions, reviewed local data, and built early support from several municipal stakeholders. The proposal is finally scheduled for a public meeting. In the weeks leading up to it, momentum begins to shift. New voices enter the conversation, concern grows louder, and some decision makers seem to less certain than before. So the coalition, our groups of 5, must decide how to move forward. What actions could help? The question is, what's the top things that came forward for you in 3 to 5 words, very short phrase, in your breakout rooms? So I won't go through all of them. I'm going to try to very concisely, okay. I see industry, I see find common ground, big build on strength. There's differences in approaches. There's enthusiasm, I like that. Listen to the concerns, a lot of listening, yeah. Right timing, right people, I love it. Well, I hope we ended on a positive note. We've identified quite a few challenges, but to me, it's very encouraging to see there's a slightly bigger group that feels they're in that third phase of pre-planning, planning. So I appreciate everybody coming today. I know there's a question and answer period. I'll send it over to Tina if she wants to lead us through that, or Amanda. And our contact information is right there for those who have more specific questions they'd like to follow up on.